Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us. It's Josh at the Crossing Worship Center, where our vision is establishing the believer, strengthening the family, and caring for our community. You are about to listen to a message from our pastor, Mike McFadden. Remember to click subscribe so you can be the first to know when we release new content.
I want to go to the Word of God in Matthew chapter number 7. I titled my thoughts this morning, Christian Entrepreneur. Christian Entrepreneur. Now I'm going to talk to you a few minutes about things that God or Jesus wrote in the Word of God. But what I want you to think about are the possibilities that lay ahead of you. If we concern ourselves with today only, then tomorrow will be like today. If we do not consider changing tomorrow by changing our plans today, then tomorrow will be no better than today. The reason that we have the blessings of life is that somebody could think of something better than what we had at the current moment. An entrepreneur, I wrote this down as my definition. You can look it up or Google it or whatever. It may find something different. But this is what I wrote down. It is a person motivated to adapt and pursue a greater vision of a norm a person motivated to adapt and pursue a greater vision of a current norm. Amen. Someone who can see that we need help where we are, but someone who can say, look, we got ideas, we have plans, we're ready to make a better day for us tomorrow. Our kids will have a better day than we had. I think every parent and grandparent wants to know that. But Jesus came and he wrote these words and he taught these lessons here. We're going to read out of Matthew chapter number 7, verse number 24 through 27. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. The rains descended and the floods came. I said the rains descended and the floods came and the winds blew. And it beat upon that house. A man, he said, built his house. The storms are coming and it's going to beat on your house. But this house that this man he talks about said, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. And everyone that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened to a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended and the floods came, wise or unwise. Wise or unwise. And the rain descended and the floods came and the winds blew and it beat upon that house. And it fell. And great was the fall of it. Anything that has been taken time to have been built and it falls, it's always a great fall. Anytime you have invested in something that you have in your life, whether it's a marriage or whether it is relationships, whether it is your finances, a business, or your own personal well-being, anytime it doesn't work out, it's always a great fall. Someone this morning who may ask themselves, how are we going to continue? Well, if you and I can understand that there's a tomorrow that can be better than today, and I'm looking for that person this morning who will believe in their heart and say and be willing to say, I'm going to have something better and something better for my neighbor. Galatians 6 and 9 tells us to not be weary in the well-doing. Which simply means to me, as I've walked along this road of life and as a Christian, I remember becoming a Christian, and when I was born again, I thought that everything would get easier, when the reality was things got really harder. Being a Christian means I'm going against the conflicts of everything going that way, I'm going that way, and sometimes the misunderstanding is that if you're a Christian, life will be easier. But the reality, he says, that sometimes even when you're really doing right, it gets very wearisome. Come on, somebody. What you're fighting against and what you're planning for and what you're doing is sometimes going to be very difficult to continue to do. Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season, these are the promises of God. See, God says, I know your doings, I know where you are, I know what you're saying. Lindsay, you did a fantastic job this morning in the impact class. If you can get here on those impact classes, you will hear people that are sharing the gospel as revelation came to her, and it was very, very powerful. One of the things it was talking about is in due season, if you will reap, if you will do what you know to do. How many this morning would say, I would like to reap better than what I have? Then we have to plan for tomorrow. Come on now. We know where we are. We know what's happening. We know it's tired. We know it's very difficult. But don't faint in your well-doing. Don't let it get bigger than you promise. Don't let the difficulty override the surety that God has given you. You see, Jesus taught these lessons, and he said from chapter 5 through chapter 7, in that Mount of Olives, he taught us, listen to me, how to be successful in your spiritual life. He said, if you will listen to what I'm saying, I will teach you how to be successful in your life, in your spiritual life. I want you to be successful, and it starts with an attitude. It starts with a perception that these things will take me to a better place. It starts with the understanding that if I begin to do right and I don't get tired of doing right, then the future is bright for whoever will follow this plan. So realities are we are facing difficulties. Are we in a crisis? Crisis is growing. Not just one crisis. America, not just America, this world. But Jesus came and taught the principles that if you do these things, it will work in any environment. It'll work in any environment. He could have said, if you do these things while the sun shines. But he brought the most difficulty of thought to say, if you do these things, the rain will come and the flood will come and the wind will beat against your house. But he said, I promise you that if you will let me be your foundation, no environment around you will move you and your house will stand. Now, somebody this morning needs to say to yourself, I'm going to dig down to find out if the foundation of my life is on Jesus Christ. If it is, I promise you it'll work out for your good. The environment does not overrule the promises of God. God will sustain us even in the middle of the crisis. Jesus taught for 3.5 years to simply give us, listen to me, the reason he taught this was to give you a strong foundation. A sturdiness that you could depend on. While the storm around your environment and the crisis around you did not move your foundation. I watched one time, they talked about one of the major skyscrapers, and they said that that skyscraper has built in it the ability to sway. No matter what the storm's doing, that big skyscraper has an ability to sway. You think, well, it'll topple over. No. Well, what about the worst kind of a storm? No. Somebody's planned for the worst kind of a storm. Somebody projected out and said that this house will stand up against 125 mile an hour winds. That's called code enforcement. But once Michael hit with 175 to 200 mile an hour winds, it blew many of these houses and trees and metal signs and trains off of their track at a 200 plus mile an hour winds. I look around our county and our town, and I look around the immediate counties, and one thing I noticed is sometimes you'll run up on a foundation with no house. So they say now the new current code is to now build it back better. Take the foundation that's still there, that would have withstood 125 miles an hour, but the current condition is getting worse, and it blew away a lot of things that are no longer strong enough because it's still not in a position that it can stand a greater crisis. What's happening in many men and women's life is the house is not built for this storm. The problem is not necessarily the storm, it's the problems with the foundation. You know why you're still in church this morning? Because somebody built a foundation. You say, well, I believe that. No, I'm talking about really. I'm really talking about because currently in our society, being a Christian is going way down the list. So if you're still seeking and you're still wanting and you're still desiring, then these words Jesus told us over 2,000 years ago, if you will apply this, the foundation will be strong. God says to you, if you built your life on me, it'll withstand this crisis. Somebody say amen. Means we're going to be all right. Amen. See, Jesus has got a plan. He already knew what was happening. Now, let me ask you as we move forward, I'm talking about entrepreneurship. I'm talking about somebody seeing a problem and doing something about it. I'm talking about somebody who says, should we build? Let me ask you, should we build? I remember one time in the middle of my life, I lost my job. I had gotten a job at a business in town. And at that moment in time, somebody had to help me get that job. It was more like it is today. It's not what you know, but who you know. Somebody helped me get that job, and that job was considered to be one of the best jobs in Bay County. I was a newly married, and it wasn't going to work, working at the time for $7.50 an hour. It was just the minimum wage at the time was $5 an hour. Now, don't look at me like I'm 100 years old. It's just been a very short period of time ago. But I remember when I got this job, everybody was excited because now I was going to be able to take care of my family. I was going to be able to take care of my family. And Leanne and I, my wife, and didn't have any kids, and we were excited about the future. We began to live life. But we knew we weren't where we needed to be with the Lord. And so we began to try to get back in church and get back serving the Lord. And so we made some steps through the power of God, and the Holy Spirit drew us back to the church, and we committed ourselves to Him again. I thought, wow, how powerful, and God began to share with us and show us that serving God is better than not serving Him. I tell people a lot of times, I say, look, I've been to the worst side of the tracks. I know what it's like out there, but I'm telling you, I'd still be there if it was better than being here. That life is not better than this life. There's no reason to look behind you. There's nothing back there. There's nothing back there. It's not like it was when you think it was. What you used to have and used to be is not better than where you're going. Amen. It's not better than where you're going. The good old days were the sometimes good old days, but they were sometimes without air conditioning. Sometimes the good old days were with a hard piece of wood. Now we got padded seats. I'd say these days are better than those days. Amen. Me and my wife stood outside the other day at a humidity close to 100 degrees, and we were just sweating and sweating. I thought, my God, what if we did not have AC? And what if somebody didn't think of how to condition the air in the room? And if we could condition the air in the room, we can change this environment that would be like better than the environment outside of the house that was humid and hot. And somebody said, I think I'll come up with a better idea to condition the room, the air in this room. Well, guess what happened to my good job? Of course, we had bought a piece of property in the loan. Anybody know what a balloon note is? Try not to have balloon notes. My dad probably tried to tell me, but it was the only way we could get it. And so we bought a piece of property, and now, guess what? I'm losing my job, and guess what's now coming due all at the same time? My good job's coming to an end, and my note's coming due. Oh, it's a big deal. It was a crisis. I said, are we going to build? So I go and I seek wisdom and I seek counsel. I went to the church, talked to my pastor, told him the circumstances, and I said, I'm going to lose this piece of property. He said, do you trust me? And I said, yes, sir, I do. He said, build your house. I said, build my house? I'm losing my job. The circumstances look terrible. You're newly married. You don't need this strain on your family. Have you heard all of that before? You see, there's a normal wisdom in this world going on right now that says, listen to me, it tells us to go home. It tells us to go into a cave. It tells us to not socially be with one another. I understand we have a difficult crisis, but you and I were meant to be together. It's not political. This is true. If you're sick, go home, but don't stay home. I'm not trying to be politically correct. I'm trying to tell you that God has a plan to take us through the crisis that we are now in. He said, it is wisdom if you do what I tell you to do. It's wise. Should we build? Well, what's your foundation? If your foundation is not Jesus Christ, I suggest you don't build. Don't build. Don't put nothing on the sinking sand. Don't put nothing on the wisdom of men. They don't know the future. But if God is your foundation, and that man of God said to me, I don't care what the circumstances are, the Spirit of God is telling me to tell you, young entrepreneur, to build your house when everybody else is not building. It took courage. It took trust in my leadership to understand that the existence today is not what we have to look at. What did you learn from yesterday? What did you learn from the last storm? The 125-mile-an-hour windstorm didn't blow your house down. The 175-mile-an-hour wind blew many houses down. Don't build it back to a 125-mile-an-hour code. Somebody has to see a better day and a better way. Amen. Church, our churches are being devastated. Because the young entrepreneur Christian in the room is trying to build it back a better way. I am looking at a generation that wants to use their mind, that wants to use their heart, that wants to use the intelligence that God is giving them. And I'm here to tell that generation that I believe in your Christian entrepreneurship. And I believe that if God will help you, that you can take what is now being devastated, and if you can have the vision that God will build it back better than it's ever been before. If you will secure yourself to Him, no storm will ever take your life down. I said, if you will secure yourself to Him, the foundation of who your life is built on, you can withstand any storm. My understanding came out of spiritual wisdom, not the wisdom of men. Later on, I built my house. I paid paid like $70,000. At that time was a lot of money. We built it for $70,000. And my job, I got another job, wasn't as good as the one I had. Wasn't monetarily as good as the one I had. But later on, listen to me, later on, the house that I built was within a stone's throw or a bicycle ride from the church that was going to be built 10 years later, that I was going to learn how to be a minister in, that I got saved in, and God sent me. I mean, within a stone's throw of God knew the future. God knows this future. We're in crisis. We're in difficulty. And I look across here at some Christian entrepreneurs. Men that can see something better and say, hey, I want to do this. We can do it. God said we can. Let's go do it. The Christian entrepreneur needed to solve the problem so we can improve on where we are. I said improve on where we are. Now, before you go crazy on me, saints of God, some of you who know your word, I want you to go with me to let me get here, 1 Corinthians chapter number 3. We can improve on where we are. And this is how. For we are laborers together with who? With God. Amen. You can't see Him, but He's helping me right now. I said we are laborers together. He is helping me. He's helping you. He is strengthening you. He's opening up your intellect. He's opening up your receptivity. God is in the house moving and helping and strengthening. He said, I am co-laborers. You are God's husbandry. You're under God's care. Somebody understand that this morning. That you're not under the wisdom that you have. God is going to show you how. He is your caretaker. Come on, somebody. You have nothing to worry about. He is your husband. He is the one taking care of you. You are God's building. You are. He cares about you. He don't care about this building. Burn it down. We'll build back something else. I hope that if we have a vision that we can look for something better tomorrow. Amen. Then he says, verse number 10. According to the grace of God which is given unto me as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation. Paul said, I laid a foundation. Should we build? Paul said, I have laid a foundation. Now look at the power of this next part. And another buildeth thereon. But let every man take heed how he buildeth thereon. The key to this is this. When Jesus gave these things in Matthew 5 through 7, it was simply to build a foundation. It was not the finished product. He said, this is foundational teachings. This will talk to you about how and what you should look to build on this foundation. But what I promise you this is, young person, listen to me, old person, if you're going to build again, listen to me. If your foundation is Jesus Christ, then you should shoot for greatness. You should shoot for greatness. Why are you settling for the current conditions? Why are you looking around and going, this, I guess this is what it should be? See, God's looking for some Christian entrepreneurs that can have a vision that's greater than what we are. He said, Paul said, I'm a master builder, and I have built on this foundation, and I've put this foundation. I've taught you how to stay right. I've taught you what it means to serve the Lord. Now he said, another is going to come and build on it. Have you had anybody build in your life lately? Have you had anybody put into your life, somebody that's not normally in your life? Has anybody come along and build on the foundation that God says that you can be greater than you've ever been before, that the church of Jesus Christ should be better than it's ever been before? It shouldn't be broke down, busted, and disgusted. It ought to be something that is glorious and without spot and without wrinkle. Is built on the foundation of Jesus Christ, and it should continue to build on that foundation. The foundation with no house. What is that? What is a foundation with no house? What is a foundation with no structure? It's incomplete. Should I build on a great foundation, a small house? Should I build a house that will withstand 45-mile-an-hour winds on a foundation that will take on 1,000-mile-an-hour wind? That he said, no storm, if you build it on me, will ever take your life out. How high can we build it, God? Dream big, boy. Woo! Good God, have mercy. Dream bigger than you've ever dreamed before. Do more than you've ever done before. This foundation will hold more than you anticipated holding. It's Jesus, and it'll hold more than you've ever anticipated. We have not built bigger than our foundation. We have settled for something much less than this foundation of Jesus Christ will hold. We have seen, now we are facing a crisis. Everybody knows that. Are you adaptable? Are you adaptable? Or does it have to always look like it always looked? Are you adaptable? Are you adaptable? Will this crisis stop you or inspire you? Will it stop you or inspire you? We all have the struggle, and we're all in this together. I want you to know from side to side, we're all in this together. Even your neighbor you don't like, we're all in this together. And the person that will understand that and who will make his life better and have enough insight to know his foundation will hold his neighbor's house. Jesus told him, he said, don't judge lest you be judged. Show them how you're still standing through the storm that knocked his house out. Now listen, I'm a realist. Now, if your life has been devastated, then a crisis will expose that weakness. What we're seeing right now is the fragileness or the weakness of our society. You see what I'm saying? This crisis came and exposed the fact that maybe our hospitals are not big enough. Just throwing something out there. Maybe we realize that if we don't adapt to the crisis and learn what we end up having as a problem, to adjust to the fact that yes, we did lose some things, and maybe the reason it blew off was because it wasn't built like it should have been. But only you know that. To not take personal responsibility is simply going to leave you in the same condition you've always been in. It's necessary to us to build, but we must build in people. What we've done is we've built in buildings, and we left our people to the chaos of crisis. They went home in marital problems. They went home in depression and anxiety. They went home with frustrations and problems they could have never, ever discussed in our churches. Now, our churches are manicured and they look wonderful. The building is immaculate and looks great. And the people went home because we built the foundation in the sheetrock and we never considered the people that Paul said, I must invest in your life. You need me and I need you. These young people need us. Paul said, I'm going to build a foundation. Timothy, one day I won't be building on your life, but I hope somebody else will come along and build something else and add to what you know. Come on, folks. The reality is this. Can we build? Should we build? Yes. If the foundation is Jesus Christ, let's adapt to the crisis. Let's adapt to our problem and begin to invest in people.
Once again, thank you for listening. Join us on Sundays at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. For more information, please visit our Facebook page by clicking the link below.